I want to bring in our large and in-charge political panel, starting with Robert Costa, our chief Washington analyst. And trust me, Washington needs as many analysts as it can find. Chuck Rocha, CBS News contributor, and Leslie Sanchez, also a CBS News political analyst. Chuck, you saw Ken Martin, DNC chair. Give me your top lines.
Look, I like the way he's fighting back, and I like the way that he's addressing that nothing is right. It ain't all good right now. You have to admit you got a problem before you can fix a problem. I like when Ken talks about Paul Wellstone. I think our party, my party, has to get back to the philosophy of that great senator of talking and meeting workers where they're at. We've lost focus on that, and Donald Trump's taking advantage of it.
Robert Costa, what'd you hear from Ken Martin?
You see in Ken Martin someone who's out in the fields politically trying to build this party back. It's hard for a party chair when you don't have the White House, you don't have the Senate, you don't have the House to really build some kind of momentum. But I noticed from whether it's the chair or from other Democrats I'm speaking with, they're really starting to focus on what they believe is corruption inside of the administration or too cozy a relationship between President Trump, his allies, and different business initiatives. And that's something you're going to see, I hear, a real spotlight increase on in the coming months.
Leslie Sanchez, you heard the DNC chairman said, everyone has a poll. I'm not going to believe Trump's pollsters. Tony Fabrizio says a good portion of this pending bill, just passed by the House, now before the Senate, is popular.
Absolutely popular. And, you know, it's funny, comical from the Republican side to hear crying over losing working class men, you know, being ghosted by a significant part of the population. You want to know what that feels like? Ask women. I think there's a lot of wonderful approaches that women just politically have come up with in terms of leadership and understanding the Republican Party and the base. It was more an inclusive party, and I think it's going to take more than a few kind of, broad, loud policy changes to rebuild a coalition.
Ken Martin said that Republicans are going to come to rue backing this particular piece of legislation, that it will come back to haunt them next year. What's your sense?
Not at all. I think what the president's
full
talking
speed ahead.
about.
Vote and don't worry.
Yeah, people want those tax cuts. People want to feel he's doing something about the border. He's going to solidify that. And he has such an ironclad focus on the end of his term. So anybody who's meeting with the president right now, it's like, what can you get done quickly? And if they can't meet that bar, he passes it and focuses on his agenda.
Chuck, I want to read to you something from the New York Times I know you want to jump in on. It talks about a Democratic-aligned group prepared to spend $20 million for something that has a code name, SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan. This was in the New York Times, and promises investment to, quote, study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games, among other things.
This is classic Democrats of way overthinking something. I'll do it for half the cost for $10 million. I promise. As one of the only non-college educated, very alpha men in my party, I will promise you it's not this difficult. You show up.
You alpha men in the Democratic Party meeting at phone booths, right?
Absolutely.
Those of us who can remember what a phone booth is, kids.
You show up and you show up where they're at and you talk about things they care about. And you talk about things that are popular, not only with men, but with working families. Men, no matter if you put on a pair of work gloves to go to work or a suit and tie, worry about providing for their family and how they can get more for what they're working for, make sure daycare is less, and make sure that their wives are happy and every man is happy.
Right. But there's also this conversation about how Democrats have approached men and pushed them back, pushed them away by talking about toxic masculinity, mansplaining, all that sort of stuff. Does that go away in a party that has so many women who are in prominent positions and who think long and hard? To your point, not just Republican women, Democratic women think about the whole mansplaining thing, which I'll try to move back from. Chuck?
Look, you make a great point. And when your bellies are full and you have a job and your health care is low, that goes away with nothing's toxic because everybody's happy. And this is what we've lost focus on when we overthink a problem. Donald Trump has never been accused of overthinking a problem. He put his slogan on a hat. Be more simple, Democrats.
Robert, you talked about this idea of Democrats maybe pulling the threads of corruption or the appearance of corruption. Lots of publications have looked at the crypto space, looked at things that President Trump did on the Middle Eastern tour, saying, wait a minute, some of that looks like, if not directly profiting, certainly creating a large space for his family businesses to benefit.
The midterms have high stakes on this front. If the Democrats win back power, they win back subpoena power. And that's something Democrats really would focus on, I'm told, in 27 and 28, ahead of the next presidential, calling people up to Capitol Hill. Though it's complicated, President Trump has a firm grip over the Justice Department in the eyes of his allies and those inside the White House. How he would handle a Democratic Congress on a lot of these issues remains to be seen. But you're seeing inside the White House a real feeling of defiance. They don't look at any outrage out there as something that carries political weight. They dismiss it. Now, things change in American politics. The context can change. How voters perceive things can change. But for now, they don't feel a burden from whatever President Trump is doing when it comes to any kind of dinner attendance or business project.
Leslie, what do you think is the way we should think about Elon Musk's short tenure in Washington, D.C.? He's going back to his companies now. He's made that clear, 24/7, all the three companies really not doing the Doge thing anymore. How should we think about that? What's the obituary for that, or is there an obituary?
I think it's a remarkable start to someone taking action on reforming federal spending and accountability. And that was something that nobody had the political chops to do. And it took somebody who could really take a lot of heat. He has a tremendous heat shield, not only in his pocketbook, but politically with his kind of alliance as an influencer and his support.
You say that, but even when you look at what they, meaning Doge, has represented on X, even they keep backtracking from things that they've saved. $2 trillion, $1 trillion, $160 billion, now it's down to the low single digits. Is that really all that much?
It really matters, I think, if you talk to voters, because they're not going to care if you move the 0 or the 1 too much along that scale. They're going to care that someone went in and took a sledgehammer or his chainsaw, which he regrets to some extent, that optic, to a bureaucracy they felt that was out of control and put too much pressure, especially on working families. As long as the president is in line with that, I think it's demonstrably effective.
Chuck, I know the White House believes as long as they keep saying waste, fraud, and abuse, they win.
And it's a good thing when you ask people about waste, fraud. You can ask Democrats about waste, fraud, and abuse. It's all good. He became a political liability. It was proven in Wisconsin. And also his stock was tanking because guess who buys?
Supreme Court race, yes.
Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. It's a 50-50 state. They lost bigly, as he would say.
By
very
10.
bigly. But the other thing that nobody really talks about that much is guess who buys a lot of electric cars, which are Democrats in the suburb, which has become, I'm sorry to say, my party. So he had to get back and get that realigned because you can only blow up so many rockets.
What's the Elon Musk obit?
I don't think it's an obituary.
Right. He's going to stay.
Politically, he's hovering over the scene, and he's expending.
And he can always get Trump on the phone. Oh. And everyone in the cabinet.
Well, not only that, he can do that because he spent hundreds of millions of dollars to help President Trump win the White House. That's power. That's not just access, it's power. And President Trump is notably not yet clashing with Elon Musk, but even if he does, President Trump has a relationship with so many people at that end of the financial spectrum where it can be combative, but at the end of the day, they're on the same wavelength. They're trying to disrupt the establishment, whether it's financial, legal, or in Silicon Valley.
Robert Costa, I am very glad you got the no necktie memo. Thank you, my brother.
I'm told it's a rule here.
It's a very soft rule. It's a very soft rule.
Someone pulled my tie right before I came on set here. It's a rough crowd here behind the scenes. They
have no idea.
They can roll you off at any moment, you know. So,
Leslie and Chuck, before we go, I want to let you know this. One of the things we're going to do on the show is have long-form interviews. And those conversations we're going to put in a special place, our YouTube page. I just did one last week with Chuck Rocha. Chuck has a fascinating life, quite separate from his political observations, which are keen and trenchant. But his personal life is great. You're going to find all about that on our YouTube page. You can see it now.